3, 2, 1.
The sponsors that hook us up, and tonight is on the podcast is no different. And tonight I want to talk about Taylor's Tins. Taylor, you're a rock star, brother. If you don't know who Taylor is by now, pay attention to social media. This guy is pushing it out on Instagram and Facebook, and he's doing incredible things. Stop burning up your leather. Taylor is making aluminum tin helmet shields, and he's killing it. Totally custom, everything from classic to traditional, the LA style, indie, Boston, Metro, the Detroit, and the list goes on and on. Any style shield you want, he's doing it. He's cutting it out of aluminum and making it happen. A couple things about his tins, and I just want to hit on it real quick. Deconning, right? Leather absorbs, right? Decon on his aluminum, you wipe and go. It's non-porous material, quick cleanup. Think about it. If you're a fire instructor and you're doing multiple burns a week, get rid of the leather shield and go with an aluminum front. You can wipe it down. It doesn't shrink. It doesn't dry out. It's a home run. Locker tags and his T-chains, not keychains, T-chains, even though they are keychains. He's cute that way. But Taylor's doing incredible things, and he's a huge supporter of National Fire Radio from day one. All of our guests on the podcast get a Taylor's tin, and we put their name on it, and I'm proud to hand those out. And Taylor has been supporting us from day one, and we support him right back. So if you're not familiar with who he is, go check him out. Taylor's Tins on Instagram and on Facebook. He's got his own website as well, but hit him up on Facebook. Believe it or not, he does most of his business over Facebook Messenger, and from start to finish, he can get you a tin in under a week. This guy is doing incredible things, but he's getting busier and busier. So if you're interested, reach out to him. Get in touch with Taylor on Facebook. He'll design completely customizable, 100%, whatever logo, name, design you want. He's the man for the job. Taylor's Tins on Instagram and on Facebook. Give him a look. Taylor, you the man. Thanks for all the support at National Fire Radio. Everybody listening to our podcast, check him out, man. He's a home run.
That was good.
I want to buy another one.
We are blessed at National Fire Radio to have the best sponsors in the market. First in Emergency Products, Ryan Dodd and company here. These guys are rock stars, and let's talk about them real quick. First in Emergency Products, they're on Instagram and Facebook, and you can find them there, and we'll hit their handles out there and so on. But these guys have supported us from day one as well, and now we are fortunate enough that the National Fire Radio studios are located in First in Emergency Products headquarters here in New Jersey. Ryan Dodd, the operator of the company here, is a dear friend, and he gave us space here so that we can grow and put out the content that we're doing, and I can't thank him enough in the company. Larry Cohan, these are all guys that they're rock stars. They support us 110%, and they've been a sponsor of ours from day one, and so we want to talk about their product, and we want to talk about the upfitting and the custom cabinetry and consoles they build for command vehicles, chiefs vehicles, police vehicles, EMS, OEM, you name it. These guys are a custom upfitter who makes custom cabinetry and consoles.
I think one of the cool things about it, too, is when you told me the studio was going to be here, I kind of like rolled my eyes a little bit. But when I got here to see and come into this shop and see the dedication and the work that these guys do and the customization, it's not just some shop that's pumping out vehicles as fast as they can.
No, absolutely not.
I mean, there's some pride and ownership in what they do, and you can see it when the employees.
There's no cookie cutter. This is 100% custom shop. People come in here from the fire chief on down, and they get to design the command vehicles they want. They do vehicles for the West Coast, for the East Coast, and everything in between. They have some cabinets. I just saw them. They have some cabinets going to the West Coast in California that have trifold flat screens that come out, fold up, and flip down with like a sun glare visor on them. They're incredible. It's over the top, but they're only limited by your imagination. Different parts of the country, as we know, operate differently, and so you can design your command vehicle for accountability, for firefighting, for rescue, you name it, they do it. Totally customizable. And I think what's super cool is today they have this new product called the Gear Safe, which is a containment system for your chief vehicles, command vehicles, and so on, right? Fire vehicles, squads, you name it, utilities, and so on. But I think what's cool about it, Rob, and we were talking about it before, is that especially in the volunteer sector, A lot of chiefs have the ability to have their families. They're driving these cars 24 hours a day in their local community. And when you're putting your family, not just putting yourself at harm, but when you're putting your family and your children in that vehicle with you to respond at a moment's notice, but you have contaminated gear in the back, that causes alarm. That causes some concern. And so the initiative of the clean cab concept, this is right in line with that. This is the ability to contain your dirty gear after the fire, to get back to the firehouse so you can do proper decon. Their Gear Safe is an absolute home run, and I suggest you all check it out. First in Emergency Products. They're on Instagram and Facebook. Ryan and Larry are doing great things here. They have an incredible staff, and I can't thank them enough for having National Fire Radio under the roof in their building. And big things are to come for them and for us. And so a lot more to come on First Emergency Products. Thanks for checking them out. Go to their social, give them a like, tell them we sent you over there. They're good friends, stand-up firefighters in the business, and they support National Fire Radio 110%. Guys, check out the podcast. Thanks for checking us out. Have a good night. Enjoy. All right, so, hey guys, Jeremy, National Fire Radio with, as always,
Rob.
Hi, Rob.
Hey.
Tonight, in the studio, Fast Rescue Solutions. I'm sitting around this table with a bunch of all-stars, and it's funny because since we started National Fire Radio, every time we get new guests in here, it's kind of one of those surreal moments for guys like me who, you know, I enjoy sitting around and talking about the fire service, and I love meeting guys that just have incredible pedigrees, and that's where we are tonight. We're sitting around a table tonight, New Haven, Connecticut city fireman, retired battalion chief out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Capital city.
And two brothers from Philadelphia, and then, of course, Rob Ridley from Poughkeepsie, New York. But for myself, this is a cool moment. And tonight, Jason, Chief Horst, Michael Horst, Chris Simpson, and Eric Allen are the team, or part of the team of Fast Rescue Solutions. And they have an incredible product called the Fast Board, and we're going to get into all that and the backstory behind it. But tonight, here we are. And gentlemen, thanks for joining us. I mean, this is super cool to have you guys here. We shot a bunch of demonstrations earlier on, and we're going to put those out on all of our channels to make sure that we get your product out there, because the one thing that I'm proud of with National Fire Radio is the authenticity of the content we put out. And you guys are very much in line with that. Chris does a lot of your social media marketing and so on. And so Chris and I connected, and it was a no-brainer to get you guys into the studio to really dissect the products, see what the product's all about. And then what I like to do, and what we do here at National Fire Radio, is we're storytellers. And so we want to capture the story behind it, because I think the story is the most important part. I mean, this tool, this product was designed to save lives. And we have to get into some realistic conversations tonight about firefighting and down firefighter removals, Maydays, and RIT operations, and we're going to talk about all that tonight. And sitting around this table with you guys, I mean, there's not a better group to talk about it with. So thanks for joining us. Let's get into it, man. Eric, you are the inventor, the founder, and why don't you give me the architect?
Yeah, the architect. I like that. I thought of the Matrix when you said that. I was
I like
the
that.
architect. All right.
So Eric, man, lean into that mic. Give us a little background on the product, and then we're going to just flow from there, brother.
So my name's Eric Allen. I'm a Philadelphia firefighter for about 24 years now. I've been on their special operations company from the beginning of their formalized training program, which has been about 18, 19 years now. I did firefighting in the Navy. I served on the USS Forstall, and I got pulled onto the at-sea firefighting team. And that's the first real exposure to the fire service that I had. And I was like, wow.
The hook.
This is freaking cool, man. Everybody wants everybody to do good. Everybody's like helping and all this stuff. No backstabbing. And that's when I really decided I want to be a fireman. And I landed in Philadelphia in the last 6 months of my service with the U.S. Navy. And I was like, hey, they're giving the test. I went and took the test. And it took about 2 years after I got out of the Navy to actually get on the job. I was number 86 on the list, and they took 84. and I was like, I'm not going home. So I guess I'm going to stay here and do shit jobs until I get home. And that's what I did. Got on the fire service in the academy. I mean, really, one of the first things that got impressed upon us was firemen die. And the last big fire where, firefighters in Philadelphia had died was the Rising Sun Baptist Church. And I remember the story, of, I didn't know it at the time, but some of the best firefighters own the fire department, and some of the best ones that I've ever met in the fire service were trying to get that firefighter out of the basement. And they thought they were going to die in that basement because nothing they did worked. Every time they moved up 2 steps, they moved back 1. Every time they moved, they got hung up. So right from the beginning, it was like in our face. Getting a fireman out of a basement is a deadly thing, and it is tough. It took me a while, and when I finally got into the special operations program, I remember the day that we were getting trained to move firemen up a set of stairs, and the instructor was like, "All right, this is the best we got. It sucks. It's going to suck the entire time. You guys come up with something better if you can." We didn't come up with anything better. We got done with what we were doing. We learned the techniques. We learned it as best we could. It sucked. And then I was real fortunate. I was a bit of a rope nerd, and I got to teach the next 3 special operations courses. And I found myself saying the same thing to the students that was said to me. Hey, this sucks. This is hard. You're going to have to put your face down in that guy's crotch. You're going to have to get his legs up on your shoulder. It's going to suck. On the 3rd time that I did it, I was like, maybe we should try to come up with something better.
Yeah.
And I bit into it, and I just couldn't let it go. And then it was, I was going to work with some other guys, and kids and family and schedules and everything else happened. And, I was out there working by myself, doing popsicle sticks and tool dip and baling wire and cutting backboards in half and doing all this stuff. And then something hit. Something started to work.
And this is what, about 7, 8 years ago?
It's about 7 years ago now.
Okay.
7 or 8 years ago now.
Right.
It's hard to even remember. I mean, 7 or 8 years ago seems like 100 years now. But as soon as I got something that worked, I gave it to guys that I trusted. I was like, I don't even want to watch it. This is how you use it. Go and play with it and tell me. Like, don't be my buddy. Kick me in the teeth.
Yeah.
Tell me what's wrong. Don't tell me what's right. Tell me what's wrong. And they would come back to me and they would say, this didn't work. This could be better. And I would take it back and I would play with it and I would look at it and I would dream about it. And I'd wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go work on it for 3 or 4 hours.
I know that feeling.
Or I'd sit and look at the ceiling and think about it forever and refine it. And then I got it to the iteration that we're at right now, and I took it back to those guys. And it was really important to me. I took it back to the guys all the way back to my academy. I took it back to the 2 guys that pulled that fireman out of that basement.
That's what I was going to ask you, yeah.
And I would not launch until I got both of them to look at it and say, yeah, that's good. And it took me a long time to get that done. And once they said, hey, I don't see anything more that you can do, and I wouldn't take anything away from it.
Yeah.
I said, all right, well, then I'll move forward now.
Yeah, I mean, that right there, I mean, it's become a love for you, right? I mean, this is a true passion that you have for this product, and you've put everything into this. I mean, our conversations before we even started, I mean, just hearing the backstory on all of this is quite impressive. And then to round yourself out with a cast of characters that have a strong pedigree behind you, I have to think that, and I've seen Steve Jason. I saw demonstrations put on by him with the board, and that was my first exposure to the fast board and so on. So I know that not only for yourself as the creator of this product, but every guy that you've surrounded yourself with to talk about this product and educate, right? Because you're not selling, you're educating. When you educate the people, the firefighters, right? The guys that you have doing that share that same passion that you have. And that's cool, man. I like that a lot, right? You surround yourself with people you enjoy being with and that share that common theme, and it's fantastic.
Yeah. I can't have people around me that I don't trust.
Right.
And I can't have people around me that are, full of shit. Everybody who's come forward has come forward and said, hey, we've looked at what you're doing. We're not just interested in it. We want it. Steve Jason, he called me up. I didn't know where he was from. He's like, can I come down? I've been watching you on Facebook. Can I come down and see what you're doing?
That's cool.
And
That's great.
I was like, yeah, I'm working tomorrow. You can come down. And he drove, and I didn't know this. He drove 2.5 hours to come down and just take a look at it. And I showed him what we were doing, and he's like, I didn't know him from Adam. I didn't know who he was or what he did or anything else. And I showed him on top of the pool table in the firehouse. And he was like, yeah, man, I really like this. Can I show this to some other people? And I just slid it across the table, and I was like, yeah, take it.
Nice.
Yeah, go do.
I know he shares a passion with like all you do too on the product. And you said something, Eric, that caught my attention. You said full of shit. And, we talk a lot about that in the fire service nowadays about full of shit. That is a big thing. Chief, you and I talked about this before. And I think it's a concern. And what I wanted to dive into tonight, what I think are people that follow our podcast or listen and chime in and so on, I think what they appreciate about what we do is there's no roses and sunshine. We paint true pictures here. We tell stories and we talk about reality. The reality of removing a downed firefighter is not what most firefighters are learning in training. And no. Chief Horst and I were talking about this prior to going live with all this. We were talking about in the recruit school about how they teach, and removals and standard removals should be taught at day one. And Chief, maybe you want to talk about that a little bit. We were talking about it before, and maybe you want to dive in just a little bit so we can kind of paint the picture, because where I want to go with this is I really want to talk about how difficult the challenge of removing an unconscious downed firefighter truly is. Not in a training building, not with a mannequin, not with a unconscious firefighter, quote unquote, but it's just a fireman laying on the floor of a building with no clutter and no furniture and so on. I mean, the training conditions, truthfully, a lot of times for down firefighter situations are not realistic situations. Absolutely. And so the removal of an unconscious firefighter is probably one of the most difficult things to do, and probably one of the least done jobs on the fire ground. Like, if you think about the amount of fires and the amount of firefighters in this country, how many times has a firefighter in their career removed a downed firefighter? Probably slim to none, right? So, Chief, you want to start the conversation on that? Would you mind?
Sure.
Awesome.
I think one of the things that we're trying to grasp at FAST is we're trying to crush the current culture. We believe it's wrong. We believe that when you have to go to a RIT class to learn how to save yourself first, firefighter survival, that's an epic failure. Yeah. You should have learned that day 3 of the academy. Day 1, this is your turnout gear. Day 2, this is your SCBA. Day 3, this is how you rescue yourself and the guy next to you. That should be at the academy. But at the RIT classes I'm trying to help people with now, I'm finding that they're spending the first 8 hours of a 16-hour RIT class on firefighter survival. That's wrong. I believe that the second you snap that first snap on your turnout gear, that's a commitment that I will. That I will is that it's about them. This whole thing, what we do at FAST, is about them. We believe that the only way that you can save a human being in a burning building is to go inside and get them, or get them in a window or whatever. But it's got to be about them. But here's the thing. This is why I am so passionate about this product. From all my time when I was a fireman, when I was a company officer, when I was a command officer, then I was a battalion officer, when I was the acting chief of the department, it's about your own personnel. 9/11 taught me that. It's about your own personnel. You need to be able to provide something for them. So here's how I look at it. If you're running at 160% as a human being and you're trying to save people's lives, things are going to go wrong. I don't care how physically fit you are. There's going to be a situation where someone is going to go down. And here's what people have to train at. This has to be the training minimum. The minimum is that you're going to remove an unconscious, not breathing, down fireman in an ideal H. That's the worst case scenario. If you're trapped and encumbered and have 3/4 of a cylinder, okay, fine. We'll get you out eventually. You're good to go. We have RIT bags, fast bags. We can support you in many different ways. But when you're unconscious, not breathing, an ideal H, You got 5 minutes to live. And that's the thing that we preach. We preach, fire or die. The fire or die mantra that we're about is that if you can't get that unconscious, not breathing fireman in an IDLH out in 5 minutes or less, it's an epic failure. We are amazed that today that people talk about studies. The studies, the two most popular studies in the American Fire Service were conducted almost 20 years ago. Okay? Phoenix, Arizona, and Seattle are the two old ones. And essentially what came out of that whole thing was it takes 18 to 22 minutes to rescue a downed fireman in a RIT situation. Listen, we talk about this all the time. If you're a fire chief and you subscribe to that, that's epic failure right there. You're done. What you need to do, we preach this all the time. You need to self-assess your department. If you really think that you want to provide the best protection for your people, you're a fire chief and you're out there listening, or you're a company officer, put one of your people down below grade and have your personnel start from upstairs. And if they can get them up and out without a hasty rescue device, an HRD like a fast forward or something else, then you know what? If you can do that, and I've seen it done, attaboy. But what about when the A team's not working? What about when it's the B team or the C team or the D team? You know, can you get that done? So that's really why I'm so passionate about it. I think we need to rethink the whole process. We need to go to the worst case scenario, unconscious, not breathing, in an IDLH. There is no time to do anything. That's when the air management man needs to become the bag man and the board man, and so we'll go into that later, but it's...
How do we do that? I mean, how do we educate, right? I mean, this is why we're doing this tonight, right? But, like, how do we... If that fire or die, like that, I truly haven't heard that before until right now, and I'm thinking that is a mantra that's going to pound in my head probably for the rest of my career in the fire service. And that is, it's scary, right? Like, I think about in the volunteer fire service, well, career volunteer, it doesn't matter, right? When you take on that responsibility as an officer, as a firefighter, but as an officer, as a chief, you have that responsibility of bringing that company home. You have that responsibility of bringing that fire under control and saving life and preserving property, right? And that fire or die, 5 minutes goes very quickly in a fire ground. And when you want to get into some real conversations, and this is, Chief, thank you for leading into this, because this opens the door to this conversation. Let's be brutally honest. How many people are going to be able to perform that? And go ahead, Rob.
I don't think a lot of people will be able to perform it, because I know from my own career, like going to New York State Fire Academy, being taught New York State's version of what they consider RIT operations as a fast class, and then like believing in this fake cult following of this is going to work. You're going to do great. Like you said, it sucks, right? And then I remember getting out to fire. I've talked about this numerous times. I went out to Firehouse Expo. I did RIT under fire. And I said to this guy from Chicago, I was like, well, I've always been taught to do that. And he looked at me and was like, I'm going to let you try it when the building's on fire, and we're going to see how well it works. And I was like, oh, all right. And he just had this confidence to him. And I remember getting in there, and like it was hot, and I couldn't move my hands. Like that digital dexterity went away, and it was gross motor skills. And it was at that moment where I was like, this is why they taught us all these simple things today, because this is going to work. Like all this fake, I don't want to say fake news, but like all this fake stuff that I've been taught, it went right out the window, because none of it worked when I was under a live fire condition. And
that's what stress-induced training is about.
Yeah.
Stress-induced training brings that about. It makes your motor skills start to shut down because your brain can't handle what your eyes are seeing.
Yeah.
And that's what's so important. That's why the 5-minute thing is so critical. So, we're at FAST, we're supporters of the firefighter down CPR protocol. We support that. We integrate that. We are firm believers in that. But one of the things you have to remember is that in that IDLH, can you do that? If you're a believer in high performance CPR like I am, there is nothing you can do while your man or woman is down in that environment. There is nothing you can do to change the outcome. Perfusion is the solution, and without some type of perfusion, they're dying. If you can't, and the only place for that, I'm sorry to say, is on the sidewalk. That's why we believe in that. We believe in that integration. We believe in that interface, the handoff. But what has to happen is you need to get that person up, out, and on the sidewalk to make that all happen.
I think Rob brings up a good point. So you talk about simplicity. So if you looked at some of the special operations study, when guys are under stress, you know, all the endorphins and everything kicks in, but you lose that cognitive function. What Eric did was essentially take a lot of technical rescue stuff and make it very simple in one simple package.
Yeah.
So one clip, one pool moving. That's all you got to do. It's like it's just that simple, and that's how the guys are doing it so fast. 45-degree undercuts. Every speck of this is done precisely to overcome things like the bull nose, getting them on, getting them face down, having the RIC connection available if needed. Just one clip, and they're in a harness, and you're out the door. Cool. So.
And the nice thing about the product, and this is where I fell in love with it, is that like you take a department like myself, where the area was running Scots forever, and that's what we were taught on for that fast class. It was like, hey, you're going to use a Scott, and then all of a sudden there was an MSA in the mix, and there was a Survive Air and a Spiro, because the department was switching over between the two of them, and then there's an MSA. Now I've got a Draeger. Like, I have no clue where them straps are, where those alligator clips are, like how they work. And this, you know, and I watched you do it tonight in 30 seconds, and it didn't matter what SCBA, the down firefighter had on.
Harness conversion.
Yeah.
No hasty harnesses, not doing circle the wagons with the webbing.
Yeah.
Nothing like, you know, something you can't see. Limited dexterity, high heat, high stress, low visibility.
Well, and that's a good point, right? Because, I mean, the survivability of a firefighter is removing him. Removing him to the care that's going to keep him alive. It's like putting out a fire.
Yeah.
You get water on the fire, the problem goes away, right? The initial hand line going into that building, like Chief, like you said before, we have to go in to make a difference. We go in, we get water on the fire, problem goes away. It's the same thing. Instead of screwing around, trying to, fittings, alligator clips, switching packs, changing over air, if you can remove a fireman in 30 seconds from a building or in a minute in a building because you have a tool that allows for that, well, guess what? We need to really start talking about that tool because my life, your life, it depends on removal, but it depends on the people removing us. If you have a simple product that works simply in tough situations, I mean, when we do RIT removal, we do them in concrete buildings, we do them in basement of homes, we do them on linoleum floors, hardwood floors, and acquired structures. We're not doing them on carpet with 20 inches of clearance between a couch and an armchair and a coffee table, and the bookshelves failed and things fell over. And I mean, that's a realistic conversation. And this sled, from what we saw, and I don't know if sled's the right term, but the fastboard, the way this is designed, it allows for ease of movement. And that's what I like. And the bullnose on it, getting it up out of an from a lower position up the staircase, I've done those classes. I have never removed the unconscious firefighter from fire conditions. Never have. I probably never will. If I do, I hope to think that I can act accordingly. But having a tool, we train on thermal imaging, SCBA, and every other tool under the sun, right? Why wouldn't we talk about a tool that allows for firefighter survivability? It's a no-brainer. Why aren't we talking about it more? Why are we teaching these antiquated lessons in the academy to the incoming students and probies that put your head in their crotch, put their legs over your shoulders, and you can lift them one step at a time?
So when I go out and do these trainings, I basically start my training. I ask the department, if you have a Mayday situation tonight, what is your game plan?
Right.
And generally I get a lot of blank stares, and then they'll start saying, well, we do the typical old school fashion where you find your down firefighter, reset the pass alarm, radio it in, attempt to convert the air pack. I say, okay, how does that usually go? Well, if you drop a strap, you can't find it, it delays the whole thing. Then maybe we'll get it done, or maybe we won't, and then we try and drag. Okay, how much coordination has to be done with the dragging, especially if we're going from below grade and up? A tremendous amount of coordination. It doesn't always go well. Okay, how long does it take you guys? And usually you get that 10 to 20 minute mark, like we touched on earlier. If someone is not breathing below grade, and it's taking us 10 to 20 minutes to get him up and out into ALS care, what are we truly delivering to the ambulance? A dead body. They're not breathing. It's done. The fiver died. So the simplicity of the board, a simple 30-minute talk tops about the various components, packaging, movements, and they'll be able. I'm getting guys removing down firefighters, although not under live fire conditions initially, in that 2-minute window. It's something that they've never thought was possible. They think I'm full of shit when I first tell them, but then after 10 minutes of actually doing it and seeing the other guys do it, they're like, wow, this is really impressive. I've never done a demo or a training where I walked away and had someone say to me, nah, it's all right. It's all right. Everyone is always blown away. They don't believe me. They think I'm full of shit when I get there. But after spending an hour or two with them, they're amazed by what it's capable of.
There's got to be in this room some great stories of, and I don't want to say like necessarily name out names, but like there's got to be some great personal experiences of bringing this tool to departments and just watching this aha factor, like these light bulbs, because I always enjoy that just in general. Like you watch people all of a sudden they're like, whoa, and it clicks on. I mean, is there anything that sticks out for you guys as far as something that you can talk about?
One of the first times when I had I got a 3D model made of the board. This is when I first met Chief Horster, and we were on the papal visit. We were off in a field as a PA Task Force 1. We were training all the time, but we had downtime, and I kept going over to the table, and I had my little 3D model, and I was tying it with little ribbons and doing this, and I had a little doll, and Chief Horst comes over to me, and he goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, well, I'm working on a rescue product." He's like, "Show me what you're doing." And I said, "Okay, well, it's set up this way." And I packaged the doll onto it, and I showed him how it worked. And he goes, pats me on the shoulder and goes, "Yeah, okay." And he gets up and walks away. And I was like, "Who the fuck is this? Who was this guy?" And he walks away, and I'm like, "Whatever." I keep working on my thing, and he comes back over, and he hands me his business card, and he goes, "If you get that pulled together, you give me a call." And that's how I met Chief Horst. And right there, that was that aha moment. He was like, "Oh." And that was doing it with, a 13-inch little 3D model of what I was doing. And it's always, I love looking in the crowd. I loved going to do the demos and looking in the crowd. And I like to see that guy who's like looking halfway and arms crossed. And you know what's going through his head. Another fucking piece of shit. If I could be here. And man. And then you get that guy packaged for the first time, and they're like, "Man, what was that? What just happened? You're done? Wait, do it again." Do it again. And they're like, whoa, wait a minute. Something's going on here.
I'm missing something.
Here, now what are you doing? What, you're moving him up the stairs with, 2 people? And they're not completely spent? And then all of a sudden that guy leaving that night is like, "We have to get that thing." I love to see those guys. Those are my favorite guys.
Have you had the ones who aren't confident in their skills because they haven't, like they've had just I don't want to say a bad experience doing like RIT work, but they've had a bad experience. Like they've been taught these maneuvers and it's never worked out for them, and now they're using this and they've got the confidence and they're like, "All right, now I'm a lot better at." Or
yeah, I mean, you get it across the whole spectrum. You get guys who are like super confident in everything they're doing, and then they get this and they're like just that much more. And we call it 10s and 2s. Everybody can't be a 10. Everybody's not going to be a 2. You're gonna have a lot in between. So it gives that breakover that anybody can do this, and that's what we want it for. It's not just a RIT board. We're able to save our own. We show up, especially for volunteer companies, when they have very limited personnel. If they've got one of their buddies goes down, or not even one of their buddies, somebody they don't even know, one of the other companies, they're running with 4 guys and they're working a fire, and one guy goes down, and the RIT company's 15 minutes out, they're not going to stop and go, "I guess we'll just wait and hold the fire back and wait for the RIT company to come in and save this guy or girl or whoever." They're going to go do it. They're going to do the best they can. And it gives them so much more of an option that they know they can go down there, they can get this person onto the board, they can make that connection, they can make that rescue. It's not magic. It does take training. It takes familiarization. But
it's a tool.
It's a tool.
Mm-hmm. And you hit on something that I wanted to bring up is that when you start reading NIOSH reports and firefighter fatality reports, and I'm gonna, after tonight, I'm gonna go back and look at some of the firefighter line of duty deaths and read about the situation to see what the time frame is, right? The timestamps on those reports, right? And I can guarantee you it's not 5 minutes, right? And then take it a couple steps further. You mentioned before removing a firefighter, say up the stairs, right, from a basement, or even through a cluttered room. how many firefighters does it truly take to remove a downed and unconscious firefighter? Those guys are spent before they can even get the firefighter out, right? I mean, especially when you're wrestling, struggling, right? So you're talking about it's a manpower exhausting experience.
Absolutely.
You got to throw people at this problem to make it work. If you have the right tool to make that work, you can do that with Rob rides with 6 guys in a daytime shift. 2 pieces, engine of the truck going out the door. If you have a down firefighter, one, the line's got to stay on the fire, right? Or the problem's only going to get bigger and you're going to be in a worse shape.
One that's down.
Right.
You lost one to the hose line.
That's right.
Somebody's is going to try to run the situation. You might have 2 or 3.
Right. And that's where I was going with this is it's an exhaustive experience to remove a downed firefighter, let alone throw it at a minimally staffed department. Yeah. A tool like this can only help. You know, and you're right, though. It takes training and it takes knowledge and it takes know-how. But to be able to have a tool at your fingertips, I mean, truthfully, I'm going to go back and look at some of the fatality reports because I'm curious now. The slogan you guys have put out there, I think needs to be said. I think you need to.
You can just look at some of the bigger ones, the Denver drill, where that came from, the Nance drill, where that came from. You look at Brett Harbor out in Phoenix. Flat floor. He was in a warehouse. They had to move him around in a warehouse. He was 240 pounds in his gear. I talked to some of those guys. Moving him 5 feet, exhausted. Moving in Philadelphia, personal experience. You know, I was not on the rescue, but I talked to the chief. He was my chief, ran that job. They found 2 firefighters at the bottom of the steps. 40 minutes later, they had him out. And then when you go and look at it, you're right on par.
And that was Taylor Rubio, right?
It was Taylor Rubio.
The thing to remember about Taylor Rubio, and I'm not a Philadelphia fireman, but I know this situation well. When Mayor Street did the eulogy for firefighter Taylor and Rubio, he made mention that these 2 Philadelphia firemen died doing something that Philadelphia firemen do every single day of the week, and that's fight a simple row home fire. Yep. That's all that was, a simple row home fire. And those 2 guys, seasoned Philadelphia firemen, died in the basement. That's powerful when you think about that. And
you had one of the best chiefs I've ever worked for running that job. You had some of the best firemen that I knew on the Philadelphia Firefighter were, facilitating that rescue. They said every time they moved them up 1 step, 2 steps, they moved back 1. They ended up trying to cut the bullnose off the front of the steps because they just didn't know how to overcome. They couldn't get it done. And they came out of those basements. They didn't have their packs on. They didn't have their mask on. They didn't have their helmet on. They didn't have their jackets on. Wow. Because people go into frustration, the techniques that we were taught, then they just start grabbing and pulling, and we start stripping everything off them. And if you go back and look, that's generally how a fireman comes out of a basement, out of a subsurface area, with no pack on, yep. No helmet on.
Naked from the waist up.
Naked from the waist up.
Captain Vinny Fowler, FDNY, is another example. Talked to the people that worked with Captain Fowler, knew him real well. And the first thing when I talked about that in the training was, man, he was a big man. Not that he was fat. He was a very tall man, very muscular, and he was just simply so large. And when they brought him up at the end, when they finally removed him from the building, he was essentially naked from the waist up. And that's the problem. We're taught in the academy extremity drags, extremity carries, those kind of things. They just don't work in this application, particularly when you're soaked from water, perspiration, everything. It just becomes just a major shit show when it's all said and done.
The board works incredible with large people. In the training environment, I've been involved in removing a firefighter who was 325 pounds before he put his gear on, in full gear with SCBA. So we're pushing 400 pounds. I was able, through training, to get 3 guys to remove him up a set of return stairs in about a minute and a half. Try doing that with a limp body and an air pack on, catching on the risers as you go up. It's not happening. Because you're able to put a rigid device under him and slide him in a coordinated fashion, it's like nothing else out there.
And Chief Horst said it before when we were chatting. And Chief, if you will, talk about the bag of chain versus the steel I-beam, because I think that analogy sits very well, and I think it's smart, and I think it paints the picture of putting it into perspective for guys trying to picture this. So
Right.
if you wouldn't mind.
Well, when you and I talked about that. Eric and I had this conversation coming back from the FDIC this spring, and we were talking about how you explain, and Jason just talked about it perfectly. How do you explain to the layperson how this thing works? It's not a parlor trick. It's not magic. So the way we talked about it was you take a 250-pound chain. It's the base of the steps. Okay, so you put it in a sack, and you need to move it to the top of the steps. So the process is simple. You have to lift the chain. You have to step up one step. You have to set the chain down. You have to do that for 15, 16, 17 steps in a residential application.
It's awkward.
It is awkward.
Yep.
What the fast board does, exactly what Jason just said, it takes the 250-pound chain. It doesn't reduce the weight, not 1 ounce, but what it does, it changes its form. It becomes a 250-pound steel beam, and then it becomes magic. Then it's much easier to work and up the steps. And
it's not just steps. Getting someone up on a windowsill.
Sure.
Trying to get a 400-pound object that's limp up onto a windowsill. Very, very difficult. With this, so much easier. So much quicker.
And we talk about down firefighters, but I mean, Eric, let's talk about civilian removal.
Absolutely. I mean, you go ahead and I've actually pulled out civilians. You know, you find an unconscious civilian, they are a bag of meat.
Right.
That's all they are. They're a bag of meat. There is no rigidity in the body. You know, what we do with this is we put them on a semi-rigid or a rigid platform. We strap them down to it. At least a portion of them becomes rigid. We cut down on the friction, so now it moves across a surface better. Then we give it the ability to walk over the top of things. So now we don't have to worry about it getting pushed under something. You know, that's really what it's about.
Yeah.
It's about identifying the problems, and the problem isn't, you know, that a firefighter went down. It's the problems of taking a bag of meat and moving it. You know, it's just and I hate to refer to a fireman or anybody as that, but that's what they really are. That's what it feels like when you're trying to move them.
And I think for you painting that picture, I think it's necessary, because so many, and myself included, have not had to remove a downed firefighter or a civilian. I just haven't been put in that position. And so, you know, for me, you could train all you want, but you train on 200-pound dummies, you train on firefighters, they are rigid. You know, the picture you're painting and what you're talking about really starts to settle in a little bit to understand that this is a much bigger issue that I don't think is being talked about. The realistic conversation on removing somebody under fire conditions in a building is not talked about.
Well, I think that is the problem. And, you know, big shout out to Steve O, one of our guys. He says this all the time, and I never steal his thunder. He talks about what RIT has become today, and he's dead spot on. It has become a checkbox on a tactical worksheet. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. We're talking with people around Pennsylvania, at least I am, that their RIT is either 1 hour, it's either 60 minutes or 60 miles away. Their RIT. That's criminal. It's criminal. It's a checkbox on a tactical worksheet. What this whole thing is about is we're trying to reduce the number of firefighter fatalities. We're still killing the same amount of firemen every single year. We're not changing that. Shame on the alphabet organizations that are trying to hijack our fire service. They're not making an impact. We're still killing 100 firemen a year. And the problem is we have to look. Now, will the fast board save everybody? Absolutely not. But what an HRD, a hasty rescue device, will do, it'll take somebody and, think about Chief Don Abbott's Project Mayday. Excellent reading. I highly recommend anybody that has an interest in this, read up on that. You'll see that a large portion of not a large portion, but about 8% of the Maydays are attributed to medical conditions. That's where we think we can make an impact in that number. We can reduce the amount of dead firemen in America by trying to get those that have medical events in a building, unconscious, not breathing, 90 LH, we can get them up and out in 5 or under, defeat the 5 or die. We think that's where we're going to make an impact. And that's why we believe that the fast board is just like the AED on your fire truck. And I ask this all the time. Do you have an AED? Most people today say yeah. And I'll ask them, who's the AED for? Every once in a while, I'll get a fire chief will try to tap dance with me. Well, we bought that for Mr. and Mrs. I go, stop. You're lying. It's not for Mr. and Mrs. Smith. It's for your fireman first and Mr. and Mrs. Smith second. This is the exact same thing as an AED. It's a first line piece of rescue equipment that's for your people before RIT gets there. And that's why we're so passionate about it.
Going back to the Mayday Project, I agree with Chief Orks 100%. If you haven't read it, you should read it. It's got an enormous amount of math in it. There's no opinion in it. It's math. And that 8% that we're talking about, and we'll go to demos or whatever, and they're like, well, only 8% of rescues are done by RIT companies. Okay, we understand that. 75% is done by the guy next to you, and the 80% is done by the next company over. The 8% that we're talking about is where 90% or more of the fatalities happen. Why would I talk about the guy who got pulled out by his buddy?
Right.
Oh, you got your foot stuck. Call a Mayday. Okay, got your foot unstuck. Hey, well, let's go. We're talking about the guy who goes down. He's not talking to anybody. He's not doing anything. He's not breathing. He's not moving. And we got to call a RIT company. I'm going to grab him. I'm going to do the best I can for him. But you better get somebody else in here. Yeah. You better get something else in here because I'm not getting him up that set of steps. That's who we're talking about. Those are the ones. If a floor collapses on somebody, if somebody's entangled in something, hey, we're going to do the best we can. It's probably not going to work out in the way that we want it to. The guy who goes down after the job in the overhaul, he's in the basement, boom, he gets hit by some gas, whatever, he goes down. Those are the guys that we're looking at pulling out.
We talk about a lot of different things. We talk about them. We're all here for them, right? We're here. We put ourselves in jeopardy every single day for the public that we serve. But, Chief, you and I were talking about this before. We also have to talk about us. And sometimes we don't talk about us enough. I mean, technology in the fire service has come a long way. Just in the 25 years that I've been a firefighter, I've seen massive sweeping changes. Chief, you've been in a few more years than I and so on. So, there's been sweeping changes, but why are we lacking in the true conversations we need to have about protecting our own, protecting us, right? We talk about physical fitness. We talk about cancer is becoming a huge conversation these days, and at least it's being talked about, right?
Yeah.
But are we talking about firefighter safety and survival on a level that needs to be talked about, meaning it's true, it's real, it's in your face? I don't think we're educating our own firefighters enough. I don't think we're having that bag of meat talk. And I don't say that weirdly. I mean that in all sincerity think about it.
I almost think that in a lot of ways, instead of having the talk, we're actually talking ourselves out of it. And we're saying like, oh, well, if it's 8%, I mean, that's real. I mean, if it happens, we're all going to go buy a lottery ticket because we're real lucky that day. Like, there's this disassociation that it's not going to, or this belief that it's not going to happen, like that ostrich. And I think, and I've seen it happen more than once where people are just kind of like, yeah, no, like we do it, but I mean,
it
really,
doesn't matter where you live.
2 fires a year, like
rural, single family homes, ranches, high rises. It happens everywhere. You're seeing all the NIOSH reports.
Yeah,
and it could be,
and we prove it over and over again. That's why we're not. The study's already come out. It's going to take 18 to 22 or 25, or we're not going to get it done. The study supports what we're going to do. It's going to happen, and they're going to die. And we're covered. It's a liability issue. We got to have that checkbox so when they go back and look, they're like, oh, well, he checked RIT. Mm-hmm. We can't go after him. We can't go after the department or the officer. The checkbox was there. But that conversation is a really hard one.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has been hijacked by a bunch of other things like rope rescue. Rope rescue, you don't move somebody until they are as safe as they can possibly be, where there is going to be no damage done to them from point A to point B. That's great if we got everything else going our way. But if we don't, safety has to go out the window. Safety gets put back on the list. It has to be sped up. We're putting ourselves into dangerous situations. to be able to get a lot of value out of it. High risk, high reward. Low risk, low reward. Yeah. Hey, man, if I got 30 minutes to package this guy and fly him out and he's stable, I'm taking all 30 minutes. I'm taking every second I got to make sure that he is 100%.
And that's a training scar. That's what that is.
That's
You
a
go to
training scar.
training, and it's okay that it takes, the instructor says, hey, good job, guys. It took you 30 minutes to get this guy up and out. But then they also know that they set up the scenario that was almost impossible to defeat. You know, and they wanted everybody to be creative. And they had to saw through walls and cut through concrete and burn steel. And they had to do all this sock stuff, which is senseless. Okay? If somebody's encumbered in that kind of situation, that's problematic. That's going to take a special skill set to take care of all that. But we got to go back to the beginning. Unconscious stop breathing and ideal H, and it's simple up and out. Can you get it done in 5 minutes or less? Hell yeah. And one of the things that I'm so proud about with us, this team, being a part of the head shed of Fast Rescue Solutions, is what we offer. We show people how to move people from above second, third floor on a fast board with no ladders, no added mechanical advantage, no ropes and pulleys, no whiz-bangery, none of that. It's all right there. It's on that board, a little bit of common sense, a little bit of what we show you, bam. Taking people out windows with no ladders. How about that? No ladders. On a fire ground, we throw a ladder in a rescue position. Oh, we need another ladder above. That's time. Eric talks about it's the math of firefighter rescue. Every second that you steal from that victim is a stolen second you'll never get back. There needs to be a way. This is the way. HRD, a little bit of training, it gets it done.
That's a really good way to put it. Every second you take away from the victim, from our brother, from our sister, right?
You're stealing, not taking away.
Stealing.
Yeah.
It's well put, Chief.
Yeah.
Well put.
Well, that's his. I'm stealing it from him.
No, all you got to do is just think about which one's more important, the inhalation or the exhalation. Just stop at either one of them.
Yeah.
You're going to figure out what's important real quick.
No doubt.
And we get down to a down fireman, and then we check his bottle, and then we check his face piece, and we check for a pulse, and then we give our Luna, and then we give this, and we give that, and we haven't moved him at all.
Silence the alarm.
And silence the alarm, and, start adjusting straps and doing this. All we're doing is just eating away at his time, eating away at her time.
How about a waist belt conversion? Have we changed that yet? Have we changed that culture about wearing your waist strap?
Jason hit on that, right?
Yeah.
You said that before.
Absolutely. So it's a hot button item right now about wearing your SCBA correctly. Well, if your go-to method is a seatbelt conversion, and the department that you're working isn't disciplined enough to snap the waist strap, so what's the sense of that?
You're wasting time looking for it.
Stealing time. Absolutely. We're trying to crush this culture. We're trying to change people's thought processes on how they look at this.
I love it.
Yeah. And really what it is it's a lot about litigation. It's a lot about, you can't put out information that has a crack in the safety. So we safety ourselves to death, or we safety ourselves into your death. Yeah? Fuck safety. I say it all the time. Safety third. I'm like, hey man, we're in a dangerous profession.
Yeah.
Safety, there's a difference between being safe and being careful. If I want to be careful, I'll stay home. I'll exercise in my house. I can be in good shape. I can eat good food. I can do all of that. But if I'm going to be safe, then I need to know everything about what I'm doing. I have to train it. I have to be proficient. I got to make sure the guy next to me is proficient. I got to go in and make sure he's got my knowledge. I got to make sure that the chief understands my knowledge, and the guy behind me has that knowledge. That's being safe. We don't go into safe situations. We go into burning buildings.
Right.
We go into, hazardous atmospheres. We go into trenches and swift moving water and, debris fields and whatever else is there. There's no safeties for there. Safety? What? Am I going to tape my ankles first? No. We are rolling out. We're rolling out to get it done.
Yeah, and not only that, but then put the mix of a friend, a colleague, and a brother down. and it's your responsibility. You're charged with that responsibility. Remove them.
So you got to ask people, when you jump up, when you pull yourself up on the apparatus, and I make eye contact with Chris sitting in the other seat, what goes through? What do you think goes through my mind? I look at, oh, we're going to a job.
But I want you rescuing you.
Well, what I'm thinking is,
rescuing me.
can I rescue you? That's what I got to be thinking before I think about anything. What my seat number is, what my seat assignment is, my tool assignment. I need to be able to look across and say, I can get him. And he needs to look at me and say, he can get me. But that's not what people talk about. We're going to a job. Their eyes get big and their tongue hangs out and woo-woo. That's not what it's about.
Yeah, don't put your pack on. Put your seatbelt on. Let's be safe.
Yep. But like I said, as soon as you snap that first buckle on your turn, you're saying, I will. I got this. And I don't think people get that.
I think we're losing track. Or lost track. I really do. And I agree.
Cool.
I agree wholeheartedly. We talk about it all the time on this platform, that inherently when you sign up, that day you sign up to be a fireman, you're accepting responsibility to bleed, barf, get smoke inhalation, all of it. We can't protect ourselves in a job that inherently is dangerous. So
we can do the best we can.
We can do the best we can.
Yeah, but
no doubt.
There's
no
such,
doubt.
There's
Now
such
we're
a
into clean cab concepts and not having our air packs.
There's all of that.
Time,
There's all
time, time. We're just wasting, stealing time.
But this is the thing that and this is why I like what the chief is saying, because I thought for I don't want to say years, but I was like, I was hearing this whole like, we're here for them, and like when you say you do that snap and you're taking that, like, I'm here to do this, and I was like, man, like who's saying this? Who is doing this? And then I went out to FireX Talk in Portland, and they had a whole discussion on it. And there was a guy from Cherry Hill, a guy from the Midwest who had a clue, and this Rockstar Chief Mo Davis from Houston. And we all looked at each other at the table and we're like, what the fuck are they talking about for them? Like, no shit, we're here for them. And everybody's coming up with answers and stuff. And I'm like, and I didn't say it because I was trying to be polite and I didn't want to screw anything up. But I was like, why are we having this discussion?
It's Mo Davis's PDX. He goes, would you want me rescuing me?
Yes.
Very good.
Yeah.
Everyone should listen to it.
Yeah.
Eric sent it to me. I think the chief. Or he put it on his Facebook. And
Yeah.
I just listened. It's a very 20-minute
There's
PDX.
people that got it.
Yeah. But like the fact that we had to have that conversation
He's good. That's
was even like, because this was a workshop, and I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, why are we at all having to tell people that we're here for the people who call 911?
But you got to drill down a little bit. You know, Jeremy talked about this earlier. Yeah, some of today's fire service is in better shape. Some of them are still in the middle, and some of them are just downright liabilities. That hasn't changed.
And it never will.
It isn't exactly. It never will change. Right. But we need people to subscribe. I'm excited that people are buying what we're selling, and I don't mean the fast board. I mean the culture.
Right.
We have departments that are taking it serious. That they have people that want to be the guy with the fast board. They want to be the guy. They want to be the dedicated board man. Their responsibility is to carry the fast board, carry a 6-foot steel hook and a pro bar, doing all the things that we teach them to do. That's their job. They've bought into that. They want to be the best guy on the fire ground, that if someone goes down, they have the solution to that problem. And that's what it needs to be. We need that culture to continue like that.
That's the culture that needs to get bred.
Absolutely.
It needs to get bred. And unfortunately, there's a lot of departments that don't buy into that culture. And that's the complacency that comes out of that is what's going to lead to more line of duty deaths. It's not going to happen in my department. I don't do enough calls. I don't do many fires. We don't need this.
We're not going to get an active shooter scenario. Let's not do that.
The companies in New York completely changed their box cards on who responds to their location based on who had the board on their apparatus.
We've had departments completely overhaul their RIT program. We're having a country that's completely overhauling their RIT program.
Full country.
So let's talk about that real quick, because your exposure is growing, and Chief, your culture is growing. And I like to think that more and more people are subscribing to that culture. I think there's a shift happening. I think we went too far. It's just like society. We've gone too far the other way, and now there's that shift to start bringing it back. Right? We got to get it back, because the only way this job's going to survive and the only way this job's going to remain good is if we bring it back. If we understand and inherently understand it's a dangerous job, it's a blue-collar job, and that's what it's always been, and that's what it's always going to be. We could always put more safeguards in place, but at the end of the day, you have a job to do, and that job is dangerous. So bringing it back, but Eric, you guys, the exposure, brother, you guys are all over the place. So let's talk about some success stories, some outside of the United States. You have a lot of exposure and so on. You got some stories to share?
Yeah, we when we were just really getting going, we were contacted. I was contacted by a gentleman in France, and he was going to be in the U.S. vacationing, and he wanted to meet up with me. I met with him for a couple of hours, and he really liked what we were doing. I didn't hear anything for a little while, and then I got contacted by a company in France, Capt Fire Rescue, and by their lead trainer, Fabien, and they wanted to sell our product. And I was like, well, that's great. I really appreciate that, but you have to come get trained by us. And he said, okay, when's the training? And then I had to scramble. I was like, oh shit, I got to put together training. So we got training put together. They've gone back over. I think they're in 7 or 8 countries in Europe right now. The board is in the Paris Fire Brigade. I'm still trying to get the data on it, but they pulled a fireman out of a basement. Unfortunately, he perished. And I got to meet the firefighter. I recently was over in Paris, and I got to meet the fireman who pulled him out. And he's on one of the competition teams that we support over there. And I didn't even know about it. What I didn't know is that the Paris Fire Brigade is a military branch. Mm-hmm. So getting information out of that is very difficult. But he told me about the situation, said there was a gas explosion. Firefighter fell from the 2nd floor down into the basement. Oh. He was the board man that day. Went in, packaged him, pulled him out, got him out. He was alive. Unfortunately, he perished either on the way to the hospital or in the hospital. We were contacted I was contacted by Taiwan, and I was like, I'm not going over there. Hell no. I'm not having people, copy my stuff or steal it or this or that. And mostly because of my lack of knowledge. And then I got a call again, and then I got a call again. And I kept saying, no. And finally, a fire captain from Taiwan called me, and he said, hey, can you please come? Our firemen are dying. And I was like, whoa, what's going on? He said, we've lost 12 firemen in the last year. Wow. And we couldn't move them. We didn't know how to move them. And nothing worked. Can you please come? I was like, all right, I'll come. Got over there, trained them on the situation that, the basic training that we give, trained them on the situation that they were involved in. They had 6 firemen that they couldn't move. It took them 3 hours after getting the fire under control. I was able to package them with one other fireman and move them out in about 15 minutes. And guys just left. Guys who were on that job just walked away and just were overcome. Then I found out that one of the members was a member of their family. Wow. They were in there trying to rescue not only their brother fireman, but was a member of their family. Yeah. And they had to walk away. They came back later, and we talked about it. But we're getting a lot of recognition on that.
Those stories got to fuel the growth of your company, though, and this product, and the desire to really get this out there.
It fuels us. Yeah. It keeps it fresh for us. It quickens us. Sometimes you're just tired, man. You're just like, I got to get up and do this again today. And then you think about that, and you're like, I'm going to get up and do this again today. And then I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it again. Because that's the only way you're going to change a culture.
And that's why you're changing that culture, and that's where I was going to go with it. I mean, that's you hit it spot on. That's what it's all about. It's awesome.
So, not to change gears, but what's some of the other options? I know we were going around the board before, but there's that's one of the huge points with this board, and its whole operation is not just for fast operations or rid operations.
Yeah, it was originally designed for getting a fireman out of a basement.
Right.
Then we're like, well, why can't we bring a fireman down a set of stairs? Why can't we bring a fireman down a ladder or off a roof? And then it was like, well, where else do we have problems? So now we've added the drag blanket onto the board, and everything's modular. So everything's plug and play. We added the drag blanket to the board. So now we're doing hazmat and civilians better. We added the flotation ring so that we can do water and ice. And really what that's about is that familiarity breeds confidence. So if I have one piece of equipment that I might use 2 or 3 times in my career, all those skills are perishable. If I'm not pulling that thing off all the time, if I'm not the spot on guy with it, you're going to fumble. If you got one piece of equipment that you're using across a broad spectrum, I can do that in confined space. I can do that in RIT. I can do that in hazmat. I can do that in water. I can do it in ice. I can do it in mass casualty. I can do it in a tactical or a mass event. It's gonna breed that confidence to be able to go in and get it done correctly and in the appropriate amount of time.
I was like, you talked about it before, the tactical side of it. Because I like where I'm at work, we're doing a rescue task force now, so we're trying to get like all these solutions to moving people who've been shot and getting them out of that to like a casualty collection point. And when you started talking about that board and how you're going to design this, or you've designed it to be either a 3A or you can go above that, and it can take some serious rounds like from a 5.56 or a 308. Like that's pretty important. And it's, I don't want to say it's only 11 pounds, but like that's really not that much weight in the grand scheme of things when we're talking about what we're moving.
Yeah. So the board weighs about 15 pounds stripped down. If we were putting our highest level, our AR, AK ballistic panel on there, which is stopping rifle rounds, we're only at about 32 pounds. That's about what a ballistic panel is that they're doing tactical entry with already. Mm-hmm. And that tactical entry panel that they use, a shield that they use, they refer to it as the car door. Nobody wants to be the guy who's carrying the car door through a freaking house. With this, you can move in there. You can use it as a barrier between yourself and somebody if they're shooting at you. You can use it as a barrier between you if it's a mentally handicapped person, just to have a barrier there. You can use it as a combative tool. One of your guys gets a round in them, you can lay it right down, package them, and start pulling them out immediately. You don't have to call for somebody else.
Well, that's a great point to bring up, because I just know, like, and just about the product real quick, but like we did rescue task force training and stuff with the SWAT team, and we did it in a movie theater, and one of the guys ended up getting shot for simulation purposes at the bottom of the movie theater at the screen and had to go up. And I watched these guys struggle, and I was like, hey, like, we're going to take a time out real quick. I want to show you some maneuvers that we do with the rapid intervention teams, but like it's going to work the same way. Yeah. And these guys were like, everybody went through the stuff, but like this, now you have a ballistic shield that like your threat's been eliminated. You get a guy on there, and that's just going to be a huge hit for law enforcement. And
we were able to
task force teams.
About 2 years ago, I went and showed the board to Philadelphia SWAT, and immediately they were like, yes, we are buying that. Mm-hmm. We were able to get them in there. The feedback I got in about 2 weeks was, you have the system has cut our officer rescue time in half in the first 2 weeks.
That's incredible.
That's awesome.
That's incredible.
And that's a lot of, like, because it's the same weight, right? Like what we have on as for fire gear versus what they have with plate carriers, rifles, magazines, tactical doodads, whatever, to cape somewhere in there, Yeah. Like
when I started in fire service in the 70s, this would have been science fiction to talk about this. In the 80s, working on the job, firemen in that environment, we ain't going in there. That's not what we do. That's not what we signed up for. Now today, the con ops for fire departments to be involved in the tactical side is right there. We're saving lives. That's what we signed on to do, save lives. Why not have people, trained firemen, in a situation where using the right equipment, you can get in and save people, stop bleeding, get people out of those areas, and get it done. I was amazed to do shows and see how popular Kevlar helmets and ballistic vests are that say fire rescue on them. And when I talk to the people that sell them, we can't keep them in stock. And then I asked the price, and that blows me away. I'm like, really? There's a market for this? Absolutely. It's because areas have signed on that and decided that's what we're going to do.
Well, and especially when you look at reports where they didn't do anything and people just bled out.
Correct.
And we know that like a tourniquet is easy to apply to somebody. We know a chest seal or dressings are easy to stuff a wound with and stop the bleeding. And, you know, it's just, I mean, I'm happy my department's taking a proactive approach to it, because I know there's departments that haven't. And I had to explain it to somebody the other day. I said, you don't want to be like a city that I'm not going to name that had people outside going, help me on the door. And they just sat there in lockdown mode while people bled to death out on the front steps.
Well, fortunately, you know, our war fighters have proved that you can save people's lives, gunshot victims' lives in the field a lot quicker than you could have even 10 years ago. And that's the amazing part of that. So it's nice to be a part of that.
Yeah, and the crossover is getting more and more. Fire, EMS, and police, first responders, they are working together more and more and more. And to have a confusion about what the tool that you're using and the tool that I'm using is going to be nothing but a time stealer. If you can't figure out how to package somebody because there's 6 connection points and you don't get it done right, and then you get halfway out and it becomes ineffective, and then you start just grabbing and dragging again, well, you're just stealing time from that person.
I just did a training for a department a couple weeks ago, a career department, 4 shifts. I did training for all 4 of their shifts. I did a training last night for a guy from that job's volunteer department. Prior to the fast board, they had a device for removing down firefighters. I said, how's it going with the fast board? He said, as soon as everyone received training on the board, that one went off the rig, this one went on. This is their go-to device now. Completely changed how they do their operations.
It's a game changer. Yeah, for sure.
That's what we get a lot. That term right there. It's a game changer. I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, oh my God, what is that? And then I heard it again. It was like, first time it was like, that's just an anomaly, you know, and then it was again, and then it was again. And it's a game changer.
Yeah.
And it's not magic. It does take training. Right. You do have to work with it. You do have to be familiar with it. If you want to be good with anything,
That's right.
You better have your training.
That's right.
And don't give up your basics. Your basics add to this. We never put this in play and say, okay, forget everything else you've got. No. All that has to come with you, because all of those lessons are on the shoulders of men and women before us, of the warriors that were before us, the teachers that we had. Why would I ever get off that man's shoulders that taught me everything that he had? I stand proudly on that man's shoulders and move the next guy up above.
Yeah,
that's all that is.
And that's part of that culture. And that's what you're talking about. I mean, it's not a product, it's a culture. And it's shifting that culture in the fire service to understand that it's important to be able to five or die. Get them out in 5 minutes. These 18 to 20 minutes plus, firefighter removals, it's just unacceptable.
Yep. Epic failure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's one thing I think people have to look at. I think a self-assessment is critical. If you're in an apartment somewhere, someone listen to this, you have any doubt whatsoever in your current system, self-assess, take that 5-minute test. If you can pass it, okay. But if you can't pass it, then you need to start looking at how you can defeat that. There's a lot of devices out here. Right here's one you can try. I think when you try it, I think you'll like it.
Get a demo. Ask for a demo. They're free. Come out there, tell me I'm full of shit, try the board, and
so how do we do that?
Wrong.
Chris, where are you?
We're all over the place. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We got a newly updated website as both fire and tactical side.
And Fast Rescue Solutions, are you working with others across the country to get the product out there, or is it through you?
It's through us.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Good. And overseas in every country too. I mean, you guys, it's funny that the reach of social media is hilarious, and I find it for us too. We got a lot of people from Chile, Argentina,
Israel.
Israel, right? I mean, it's incredible how platforms like this can really get the message out. And when you guys are talking about a culture shift, I think what you find is people want to subscribe. And they want to be a part of that culture shift. And in order to be a part of that culture, you have to understand and agree with that culture. And this is part of it. And you guys are doing great things. And I have to say, game changer, I think so. Yeah. After tonight, we're going to line up. I want to get you up this way. I want to do some training with you guys, with my department and the neighboring departments, and so on. So we'll get that put together.
Absolutely.
But, it's a no-brainer. And I just want to say, not that we're cutting this short, but, we've been going for about an hour or so, but I just want to say thank you. You know, what you guys are bringing to the table and what you've done for the fire service is game changing. And you guys have introduced a product that deserves attention. And there's no smoke and mirrors here. It is what it is. And it's built and made and developed by guys that believe in this culture of, you know, pro firefighter, pro survival. And that's important. That's important.
We know with that said, we're trying to grow our team, you know, our tribe, as we call it. We're looking for people that look at this and say, you know what? I want to dedicate myself to this. I want to dedicate myself to this culture change, and we're always looking for people to help us promote this around the world.
Fantastic, and I'm happy that we could do our part, and I'm glad that you guys were here tonight. I think this is fantastic. I'm excited to get this content out, and again, guys, thank you. Thanks for being here, Jason Rivera. Chief
sir.
Michael Horst, appreciate it, brother. Thank you. You and I've shared many stories together over the years,
That's
and
what brotherhood's about.
it is. And Eric Allen, thank you, brother, for trusting us with your story.
Absolutely.
And Chris Simpson, man, keep pushing because you guys are doing great things. And Rob, take us out of here, man.
All right.
That's it, guys. Take care. That's fantastic.
Yeah, right there. Okay.
Beautiful.